So we can get started with saying your name, the race you're running in, and a little bit about yourself.
Well, good evening. So glad to be with GPAC. My name is Nina Turner. I am running for the 11th Congressional District seat, which represents Greater Cleveland. I served as a Cleveland City Councilwoman and Ohio State Senator. I've served nationally as a national surrogate for Senator Bernie Sanders and then a national co-chair in 2020. My experience here in Cleveland is vast, or the greater Cleveland area. I served the Cleveland Municipal School District. I was a tenured assistant professor at Cuyahoga Community College, so my roots in this community are deep. I'm a daughter of this city. I love this community, and I am running this race because I believe that this district and our state and our nation, for that matter, needs a fighter, somebody that's going to fight to change the material conditions of the people who live, work, and play. And so I am running this race to be able to do just that in the halls of Congress.
If elected, what will you do to increase home ownership in areas that have historically suffered from disinvestment and redlining?
Well, there's a lot that can be done both on the county level, working more with the county too. I think the county has a very strong role to play in dealing with redlining. All levels of government, for that matter, have a role to play in dealing with redlining. I'm glad to see that our former Congresswoman Marsha Fudge, who's now the Secretary of HUD, she is working really, really hard on that issue, and particularly how it has impacted historically the African American community. I know in one of the questionnaires was about the book, The Color of Law. And in that book, it really lays out how the federal government played a very strong role. As a matter of fact, they were the conductors, so to speak, in the redlining process and the harm, the generational harm, the wealth harm that has been caused to the African American community has had to endure. So really working with Secretary Marsha Fudge on making sure that we can turn that around. And I'm really glad to see that she already has some things in play. But it's not just the federal government that has a role to play in dealing with redlining and the restoration of African American home ownership. We lost almost 50% of our wealth, by way of example, during the Great Recession, and nothing has been done about that from a policy perspective. So all levels of government have a role to play, local, regional, state, and federal, to not only stop redlining, but to restore the wealth that was stolen basically from the African American community. That has an impact on what a family can leave, how they live right now in the present, but also if they have heirs, what they can leave or can't leave to their heirs.
Ohio currently ranks third out of all 50 states in total number of human trafficking cases. What kind of support would you give for women who've been human trafficked, and how would you use the seat to do that?
Yeah, when I was in the Ohio Senate, I worked with Senator Teresa Feder along with other senators. It was her push. She was pushing it. But it was great to be able to be in support and partnership. She really brought to light the human trafficking that goes on in the state of Ohio that many members of the General Assembly did not necessarily know. You don't think that something like that is happening in our backyard. We're not a border state like that, and you often kind of think border states, but not necessarily the state of Ohio. So just as I was able to work with her and other colleagues in that vision that she was pushing to draw attention to that, I will continue to do that kind of work as a member of Congress, and also in a deeper way, and work with organizations that specialize in dealing with human trafficking as well.
Why are you the best candidate for this seat?
I am the best candidate for this seat because I care deeply about this community, and I know that things can be different, they can be better. I want to see government do more to change the material conditions of the poor, the working poor, and the barely middle class. I have served this community almost in every single capacity, from being a member of a cabinet on the administrative side. I work for Mayor Michael R. White, so I have administrative experience. I was an administrator for the Cleveland Municipal School District, Cleveland City Councilwoman, state senator. I have navigated the national level by working with Senator Bernie Sanders in both of his presidential elections. I ran a national organization as well, and just I've taught. So I am very much wedded to the success of this community. I am a fighter. You know, it's one thing to vote the right way, but it is another thing to put something on the line, to be able to fight not just against Republicans, because I am a Democrat, but also to call out my own party when it is necessary to advance the causes of justice in all of its forms. I am very much committed to this community. And while I fight, I also know how to work with people when necessary. I've done that. I was the minority whip, by way of example. Some people might not necessarily know that about me, but when I was in Ohio Senate, I was the minority whip. And that title was bestowed upon me by my colleagues. And my job was to be able to bring the votes together on issues that we needed to come together on a caucus. I worked with Governor John Kasich when Tamir Rice was shot on that playground in Cleveland in 2014. And I'll make this my last example. And the reason why that is important is because John Kasich is a conservative and I am a progressive Democrat. Not only am I a progressive Democrat, I am a hell-raising humanitarian. But when that baby was shot on that playground and all of our hearts ached, those of us who were very much aware of that when it happened in 2014, and to be able to talk to the governor of this state, who I have nothing in common with from a policy perspective, during the last month and a half of my term as a state senator, I could have threw up my hands and said, well, there's nothing I can do. I only got a month and a half left on my term. No, there was a lot that I could do. And in talking to the governor, not as a state senator, but as a Black mama in America who heart ache for Samaria Rice and her family, and knowing that I had a special title that I could try to do something. And the governor listened to me, and I took two of my colleagues with me, two African American state legislators, and we had a long conversation with the governor, and he heard what we had to say. And the governor assigned an executive order to create the task force on community and police relations. And for the first time in the history of the state of Ohio, going into 2015, we were able to create standards for all law enforcement agencies. That was sparked because I saw a need and I knew that I had to do something about it. And it didn't matter that Governor John Kasich was a Republican. It was about us coming together, using our collective power and authority to do some good and to hear the pain and the cries of the people, particularly the Black community. And Governor John Kasich made me a co-chair of that task force, somebody that I butted heads with him all the time, but he saw beyond that and said, we are going to unite on this task, on what we have in common. And of all the things that I've been able to accomplish as somebody in the public sphere, that will always be one of the most important things that I've done for this state. I am the best person for this job because I do understand this community and I know what it means to fight hard and to also have a vision that provides provision, not to accept the status quo and certainly not to go along to get along. When I see pain and hurt, I am going to say something about it. I hail from the Congresswoman Shirley Chisholm school of thought when it comes to being a Democrat. I am unbought and I am unbossed. And I would be honored to get your endorsement and to be able to serve the community in the capacity of being a congressperson. I serve the community right now, but serving in that capacity would be a high honor.
With Northeast Ohio being one of the world's healthcare capitals, what will you do to reduce health disparities across the district?
Medicare for all, Medicare for all, Medicare for all. I am a big proponent, not just signing up for it because it's popular. I have a record of fighting for universal health care in this country. We must have it. And the health disparities within the African American community, not just here, Cleveland is the poorest city of its size in the nation, as all of us know. It is vitally important that we get universal health care. We are the only industrialized nation on the face of the earth that does not have universal health care. It is time out for excuses. If we can increase the Pentagon budget, the military industrial complex budget, certainly we can have universal health care in this country. Continue to fight for that. I've been on the front lines with that. I continue to be on the front lines. And when I get to Congress, I will continue to push and fight for that. In the meantime, in between time, working with the healthcare facilities that we have here in Northeast Ohio, we are blessed to have some of the greatest healthcare facilities in the country right here in Northeast Ohio, pushing them to do more, supporting the Health and Human Services Levy, as I have always done, especially in my elected capacity, pushing for that levy to pass. That is something that we must continue to do. And the needs are so great at this pivotal time as people are suffering through the pandemic and with inflation and everything else that people are going through. Wouldn't it be a magnificent, mighty thing to ameliorate some of that suffering by having universal health care? I will not relent on that assignment right there, pushing until we have universal health care in this country.
Please tell us about a time you worked with someone you did not agree with to accomplish a task.
Yeah, Governor John Kasich. I gave that, kind of jumped the gun. I didn't know that question was coming. But yeah, I mean, and in working with him on that, to be able to serve as a co-chair on his committee along with his safety director, John Bourne. Again, like I said, if somebody asked me to name the top 5 things that I was able to accomplish as an elected official, it certainly was a high honor through pain, no doubt, to be able to push this state closer to answering the cries of the community when it comes to police brutality, and particularly the African American community. To serve side by side, to travel the state for 4 months, to have a governor very much in tune to that pain and willing to listen to Black women. Definitely an honor, a high honor to be able to do that. That's just one example. I've worked with a lot of my Republican colleagues and even some Democrats that I don't agree with. I was on the Unity Reform Commission that was established after the presidential primary in 2016 between Senator Bernie Sanders and Secretary Clinton. I was on that committee as well, Unity Reform, to push the Democratic Party to unify and to reform, to answer the calls and the cries of people who did not believe that the process was fair in 2016. And I had to sit side by side with a lot of Democrats that I did not agree with, but we got it done. And so I definitely understand that sometimes you got to sit across the table from people you don't necessarily agree with. If you can come to agreement on one thing or even 2 things that promotes the greater good, then I'm always willing to do that.
Last question for the evening. What is your opinion of police oversight by members of the community?
It's important. When I worked for Mayor Michael R. White, we did have the Citizens Review Committee, and the mayor assigned me to go to work with that committee because he wanted to make sure that there was strength there, and that committee was doing what it was supposed to do, which is to be oversight on police. And we also know that Mayor Michael R. White brought it to the attention, went to the feds about some things of concern that he had about the Cleveland Police Department. So being able to work for him and with him on issues like that experience definitely taught me a lot. I do believe that the community must be able to have some oversight and also relationship with law enforcement. They work for us, and it must be held accountable. It must be transparent and accountable, and that also keeps law enforcement safe too. My son is in law enforcement, right now, and so I definitely understand both sides of this. But in order to have community, in order to keep everybody safe, this is about relationship, and it's not about just locking people up and throwing away the key. And it's also not about having law enforcement deal with the ills of society. We must deal with those ills from a different vantage point, and that is through public policy. So we won't need as much policing. Don't put that on the police. We need to educate. We need to have healthcare. We need to have good paying jobs. A lot of those social ills we can help to ameliorate. And then law enforcement must understand the community that it serves, and also love. I'm talking about a deep love and respect for the community that it serves. And those words, protect and serve, must be real. Training must occur, and it must be done on a regular basis. And we must diversify the types of people that we want to be law enforcement. And that means more Black people, more brown people, more women, more people of color, and more people from a working class background, and have zero tolerance for police brutality. Not only will that keep the community safe, but it will keep those who are in law enforcement safe too. We are one community. We are in this together, and we can't have any tolerance for police brutality.
Thank you for your time, Senator Turner. We'll be making our decision and letting everyone know early next week.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate you and GPAC, and good evening to everyone.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.